taking control, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all connected but separated, misunderstood and so frustrated. A million armies of one have invaded, watching you and watching me. We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. The little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. We the people have taken over. We the people are little brother, standing by to dethrone each other, watching you and watching me. Paranoid, the lens is our weapon, desensitized in our lust for attention, democratized by our voyeur obsessions, watching you and watching me. Slaves to perfection, don't let them project you as you are. Reveal your every flaw. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye with the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. I know you're out there somewhere. This is the new totalitarian state. 1,000 eyes are waiting for you to break. Stay in line, don't make a mistake. We're watching. We've watched you for so long. We wait for you to fall. We will expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of this broadcast or podcast without the express written consent of Spaced Out Radio or Spaced Out Radio Limited is strictly prohibited. Listener discretion is advised.
Bumblefoot. Bumblefoot.
Are you experienced?
Stop right there!
From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you, listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott. You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on iTunes and TuneIn. Follow Dave on Twitter at spacedoutradio.com, on Facebook at Spaced Out Radio Show, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Game on! Game on! Game on!
Dave, oh Dave, are you playing with Bigfoot and aliens again?
The password is...
Alright.
Okay, seriously, what's with the pointies?
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride on Spaced Out Radio. Mr. Bumblefoot, Dave is ready for liftoff.
Seriously, Dave? Really?
Chloe. Bye-bye. Love you. Bye-bye.
Captain, take your seat on my left. It's time for takeoff.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 2, 1, boost ignition, and liftoff.
Just to be there with you, and I still trip over my feet, and my heart still skips a beat. I'm such a lucky guy, 'cause after all this time, it's like the deeper I go, the deeper I fall. The deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott, and it's good to have you along for the ride wherever you are on this beautiful planet we love to call Earth. We are live right here, right now in Uncle Jimbo's cabin, right here in the Great White North on this Wednesday night, early Thursday morning if you're on the East Coast. Let's welcome in everyone listening in at spacedoutradio.com, on Spreaker, on the United Public Radio Network, Renegade Talk Radio, the High Plains Talk Radio Network, and on Revolution Radio as we do this thing every night of the week. We rock in and out of every show thanks to our resident guitar god, Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL, formerly of Guns N' Roses, currently of Art of Anarchy. Bumblefoot is the official sound of SOR. If you want to follow us on social media, you can do so on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, you can follow me at Dave Scott, SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. Find us on TuneIn. Download this show and others on iTunes. We are also on TalkStream Live, RadioGuide.fm, and on Stitcher as well. And our website is spacedoutradio.com. We don't take phone calls on this show. We're a little different that way, but we do invite your questions and your comments in any of the chat rooms, either on Revolution Radio, on Spreaker, on the UPRN chat room, and on Twitter. And if you're on Twitter, use the hashtag SpacedOutRadio. I'll get to your questions and comments in there as well. If you head over to our website, if you haven't signed up for the SOR Space Travelers Club yet, it is $5 a month. And with that, your name gets entered in a monthly prize draws. You get access to a special section on our website and much more. And we're going to be building more for you, the valued listener. Hey, we're going to give you a hell of a lot more than just access to our archives. While on our website, you can read up on my latest blog, which is Science versus Opinion when it comes to the paranormal. Read up on Eric Markham's SOR Spacewire for your latest and weird news. And if you've had an experience you cannot explain, do me a favor. Fill out an SOR Sightlines report. Our researcher, Mike Schmidt, is ready to find out what's going on with you. We are live in New Orleans on the United Public Radio Network, live on 107.7 FM and in over 160 countries around the world. Thanks for being with us. We are also live in Las Vegas on Renegade Talk Radio, and we're live on Revolution Radio, the largest nonprofit online radio station going. Do me a favor, head on over to freedomslips.com and throw a couple bucks down to help them out today. On April 20th, 2015, I had Harvey Kraft on the show. You've heard me mention his name numerous times here on Spaced Out Radio. Harvey was on to discuss the topic of Buddha. At that time, we had never really done a show on any religion, but I wanted to learn more about Buddha, so why not go to a guy whose books are literally getting 5-star ratings? You got to be good to get that, and Harvey is that good. Everything was seemingly going perfect. Then it was about 15 minutes into the interview when something strange occurred. An alien appeared at my window. It's a scene that I would replay many times in my mind in the course of my daily life and on this show as one of the many experiences that I have had. Coincidentally, it's the last time I've seen an extraterrestrial. We're going to get into that fine detail about that experience, as Harvey and I recently hooked up on LinkedIn, and we're like, we got to talk about this again. Because as much as it affected me, I didn't realize it had affected Harvey as well, so he'll be back on Spaced Out Radio tonight in just a couple of moments. We're also going to get into how that event changed what he does a little bit, and how he entered the sci-fi era with his new book, The Waker, which is a sci-fi fantasy novel I want you to take a look at. Find it on Amazon. So, aliens. Was Harvey a believer beforehand? We'll find out, and shortly, Mrs. Spaced Out Radio, Jolene, is going to stop by and tell her version of what happened that night as well. It's going to be a lot of fun. And thank you for tuning on in. Harvey Kraft, welcome back to Spaced Out Radio.
Oh, thank you so much, Dave. Appreciate you inviting me back on, and such a great introduction to that amazing evening. And I was so happy to hear that you remembered it, and I think you were amazed that I remembered it.
I was.
This is kind of a reunion to talk about it in front of everybody.
You know what? It is. And I'm going to try and delay that as much as possible because I want Jolene to get down here. She's just, I broadcast out of my house in a studio I have built in my basement, and she's just upstairs putting the little guy to sleep. So as soon as she is done doing that, I know he's asleep, but she's just getting everything ready. She'll come down and she'll join us as well for this, because I think it's important for you, for the first time, Harvey, let alone our listeners, to hear Jolene's take of what happened on that night of April 20th, because I don't want to say it's a day that ruled in infamy, because it didn't. But I'll tell you, we've had some strange things that have happened during this show over the 2 years. And the 2-year anniversary is coming up, in just a month and a couple weeks from now. But I look at that as a very transcending time for me. Because when you have something happen, I mean, we were in a discussion, Harvey, and just getting going about introducing you and what brought you to the phase of studying Buddha. And we had to make an immediate turn. Are you there, Harvey?
I am, yes.
There you are.
I was, I guess, waiting for some kind of a memory clip or something. But yes, I do recall that you were weirded out.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know what? That is true, because I can tell you point blank, I was shaking. I was absolutely shaking when that incident happened. You know, because you don't expect that type of thing to happen. And I do have a clip from that. So we are going to play that, because I'm trying to be professional on this end, and first impressions, Harvey, I tell you, you must have been thinking, what the hell is with this guy? One of the things that shocked me is when we connected a few weeks ago on... Oh, goodness, you know what? I forgot to turn your microphone on this end. That is totally my fault. Sorry, Space Out Radio listeners. I'm all excited to have Harvey on. But, you know, one of the things, Harvey, when we reconnected on LinkedIn just a few weeks ago, one of the things that I was very, very intrigued in is the fact that you said that after that show, because we did talk about what had happened after the show, and I remember your wife was sitting there as well, and she was actually quite shocked in regards to what had happened as well. And I explained to you what I had seen, and that my wife had come on in and was trying to, cleanse the room and everything along those lines. And you were quite shocked by it. But here's the thing that kind of trips me out a little bit, my friend, is that you were actually, changed in your direction a little bit because of what had happened.
I was, but in a way that I didn't initially recognize myself. I mean, it was a radio show. We had an interesting experience and so on. But what happened from that night to about 100 nights later was that during that 100-day period, something started incubating, an idea started incubating inside me. And 100 days later, I started writing a science fiction book that would highlight the role of beings from what I call the source dimension of the universe. And I go by using Buddhist mythology and taking that to another level. I had a transformational experience myself in regards to going from an academic nonfiction research historian archaeologist to writing sci-fi visionary fantasy. based on the research, but opening up a new way for people to be able to understand not just what happened in the past in our world, but what's possible in other worlds as well.
Did you expect it to have that kind of a change on you?
I didn't expect it at all. I wasn't conscious that transformation was taking place starting from that particular evening and that experience. I would say that the best thing I could say is that we should begin to understand the relationships that we have with other beings in other places is something that is as much takes place in the unconscious mind, also the superconscious mind, even if we're not conscious of it. That the Buddha himself in the sutras, he is telepathically having conversations with advanced bodhisattva beings in other worlds. I mean, this is recorded in the Buddhist sacred literature, these kinds of conversations that take place in a visionary trance. So this is not something that I think is just a religious thing. This is actually basically saying, and also these documents said, that signals can be sent across the universe at different frequencies. So think about it. We're talking 2,500-year-old document that is talking about sending signals at various frequencies across space and having various consciousness, having conversations on a very high level. So that, in my view, is part of what's going on here in terms of the experience that we're sharing, that there is something larger than a face in the window, that there is something else beyond that is taking place, which is what I felt through my experience.
Well, it's funny because I have told that story, what happened that night, numerous times on this show. It comes up at least, I'm going to say, once a week to once every 2 weeks on this show, sometimes more, sometimes less. And one of my listeners, Joe, every night in one of our chat rooms, he actually posts a picture now, which he calls, "What's looking in Dave's window tonight?" So every night he is changing that. And it's all because of you, and I'm going to call him Carl, the alien, because he just seemed like a Carl. You know, he stood me up. You know, I actually invited Carl here. Harvey, I invited Carl here on the 1-year anniversary to show up. I had balloons and treats and cake and everything like that, and he no-showed on me, Harv. He no-showed on me.
Yeah. I don't know about these people sometimes, you know.
I know.
You have to, maybe you'll just have to sweeten the pot.
Well, you know, I've tried. Literally,
you know,
I have gone out. I've gone outside, Harvey, and I have actually yelled and said, "Up in the stars, where are you? I got to have this again." Because as much as we don't want the experience, Harvey, you have to admit that people whom you've talked to and researched, you want to have it again just so you know you're not crazy. Just so you know what you saw. You know what I'm saying?
Well, that's an interesting thing, because I think a lot of times we tend to sort of focus on the appearance of things, not just in terms of aliens from somewhere else, but also just how human beings relate to one another. You know, if we go to a movie and see an alien that, you know, has big sharp teeth, you know, we get scared. But the imagery itself is essentially a projection of something deeper that is part of our shared collective consciousness. We're actually everybody listening here and us, we're all having a conversation together on a higher level of consciousness. And part of that universal mind is what we tap into, and not only do we tap into it, but basically anybody in the universe can tap in with us. So I don't think that Carl is that far away.
Well, we'll have to see, and I have to laugh here because one of my listeners on Twitter at #SpaceOutRadio, we call him Canadian Joe around here because we have American Joe, who last night during the show actually posted photographs of a black triangle that was flying over his house, which is kind of cool. But Canadian Joe here on Twitter, he actually posted a picture of a gray looking inside a window here, and I have to tell you, that gray that he posted in this photo looks almost identical to the one that showed up that night when you were there. You know, it was just, right. It is, you know, I have replayed that in my head literally thousands of times since that happened, and my wife Jolene is just sneaking on in here right now. So,
oh, good.
Yeah. So I'll get her to say hello as soon as she gets her headphones in, you know. But there you go. You can say hello.
Hello.
There she is. There she is. So what I want to do here, Harvey, for our listeners, if you don't mind, I would actually like to play a couple minutes of audio from that night.
Mm-hmm.
Are you good with that?
Sure. Go right ahead.
All right, here we go. Just going to turn this up a little bit because here in the studio we are so advanced technologically.
Do you believe in real spiritual things happening at odd times? And I bring that up, and I know it's not along the line of questioning. Sometimes we have some real strange things that happen in our spaced out radio studio, and I'm going to be honest with you, Harvey, I'm freaking out right now. Out of the corner of my eye, when I was asking you questions, I had a being standing in my room that I caught in the window of our studio, and I'm kind of tripping out right now over it. It's kind of cool, actually. Love when that happens.
There you go. So just look at it like your audience has just expanded.
Well, this one was definitely odd. I had to call in the wife, Mrs. Spaced Out Radio, to come in here and cleanse the room for me because I'm a little tripped out right now and goosebumped all over the place.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting.
You know, Dave, let me. This is a good opportunity for me to sort of introduce an idea. Because I think most of your listeners and most of us obviously have heard stories that go back a very, very long way in terms of our ancient history. Those are usually stories of ghostly apparitions or spirits that appear. That is one way to understand it. However, from the standpoint of how things are understood and how they're evolved, I think today we have concepts of other dimensional beings, or there being individuals that are beyond the state of form, or beyond time and beyond space, and they're existing beings. They are not, they're not like people who die. They're actual beings who populate the cosmos. And this is part of the revelation that the Buddha talks about when he's describing what's going on all over the cosmos. Is he's talking about there being Buddhas in other worlds and other planets, and there being people who are called bodhisattvas, celestial bodhisattvas, who are able to cross vast distances. And sometimes those beings are not necessarily people forms. For example, stars that we now, the sun is a star. Stars in Buddhist literature are considered beings. They're considered Buddha stars, that they actually emerge in order to provide light and possibilities of life to take place in various forms. So I'm adding that to your repertoire of understanding that sometimes what we're looking at is not necessarily fit within the stories that are in our heads.
Well, I can fully understand that, because after seeing what I just saw out of the corner of my eye, and when I looked, I saw it, and then it quickly disappeared when I took a gasp for air while I was listening for you. It is something that it kind of shocks you when it happens, because when it does happen, you're physically, emotionally, and spiritually not ready for it. And when it catches you off guard, it kind of sends you into a little bit of a freak out, no pun intended or anything like that. But it's kind of odd that you have to kind of then sit back and assess what is going on and what is happening at that moment, because it's all about taking it in the moment and taking everything in stride, is it not?
Yes, there's something else happening there too, and the fact is that you are able to have the wherewithal to see certain things that perhaps other people who might be in the same environment might not be aware of, and that's a function of understanding the scope and nature of your mind. So here again, this gives me an opportunity to share with you that from ancient times, the shamans and right through the time of the Buddha understood that we have three minds. And those three minds, broken down to your individual mind, your shared mind, and your universal mind. So in modern terms, the individual mind is the ego. It's the one that separates me from everybody else and everything else. The shared mind is the one that separates us from them. So we share politically, we share with our family, we share in any way. You know, your audience is sharing you, so you all have a shared mind in that regard. And then the universal mind is one that has no limitation, no bounds. It's where every time you have an idea, where does it come from? Every time that you see something that's beyond the natural aspect of what you think is going on, that's your universal mind able to see things. So you have to have both qualities. You have to have the quality of your universal mind being awakened to some degree, and there are various degrees of how awakened that universal mind can be, and what is actually going on all around you and in the universe itself.
Okay, so I do apologize for that audio. We used to broadcast on a different server that, at the best of times, sounded amateurish, so I do apologize about the quality of that. But that was what happened during the incident on April 20th, 2015 with Harvey. And Harvey, I got Jolene here because she immediately came into the room. So I'm going to break it down for you, my friend, what happened on this side. As you were talking, in my old studio, we had converted an old bedroom. We had a rancher house, and we had converted the front bedroom, which is by the front door, into our studio. And as you were talking, I remember seeing something out of the corner of my eye move through the window. At that time, for some reason, for the last 2 or 3 days previous to that, I had left our outside lights off. And I saw something move. And my initial reaction as you were speaking was, oh goodness, there's someone going to come to the door. The dogs are going to start barking. And we have a little Chihuahua/Dachshund cross that when she starts barking, she can't stop. It's just one of those things that little dogs do. And here I'm thinking, okay, who's coming to the door at 10:10, 10:15 at night? And so I'm just waiting for the knock on the door, seeing what's going to happen. I ask you another question, and don't hear the dogs barking. So immediately, as I asked you that question previous to me coming back saying there was just something in my studio or at the window, I turned my chair and I looked, and out the window, I had to battle through. Now looking at it back, I know that I had to battle through the reflection, because on the other side of that window, there were the black eyes. There were the gray head surrounding those eyes. And you're talking away. You don't know anything is happening. In the meantime, on this end, I almost fall out of my chair, and I do a quick double take to look out the window or in the room. I'm not sure where. And it is gone. And that happened so fast, I would have seen something run away. I had that good of a view, but it was gone. And this lasted maybe 2-3 seconds, but it's been imprinted. So here I am panicking. I think I swore a couple of times. Thank goodness my microphone had a mute button. And I couldn't figure out at that time, because it was so immediate, was he outside or was it a spirit inside and the reflection off the window? So I immediately hopped on my phone and texted Jolene, and I said, "Get in here now, alien at the window." And I wish I still had that text message. I really wish I did. But the funny part about it is, as this is going on, you don't know, my friend, what the hell is actually going on. You have no clue.
Yes. I don't have an idea of what's going on in terms of what you're seeing. But at the same time, even though I don't see anything, I'm connected by the situation itself. In other words, there is a certain amount of, I don't know how to call that, I'm feeling that there is a being present on your end.
Mm-hmm. It could have been. It could have been. It's funny because after the show, after I had talked to you, I talked to our resident ET expert around here, a gentleman named R. Keith Andrews, and I called him up after I got off the phone with you, and I said, "Keith, you're not going to believe what happened tonight." I said, "There was an alien at my window." And his first reaction words were, "Are you really surprised? Look at the topics you talk about, Dave." And I had to sit back and actually think about that. The hard part for me, though, through this whole incident, Harvey, was trying to stay professional as much as I was freaking out. And I did a terrible job. I'm not going to lie about it. I'm not going to circle around it. I was rattled the rest of the night. It was scary. It was scary. So, in your end, do you remember what you were going through? Because I'm sure you had a lot of questions wondering, what the hell just happened?
Well, I think it triggered something from that moment on. The conversation, I think, was more about the, a very deep and profound kind of conversation, which I think many of your audience appreciated that night. It was a little different, as you said. You had never done anything on religion. And here we have not only you having an alien sighting, but at the same time we're talking about ancient enlightenment that is visionary and cosmic in its scope. Well, isn't there a relationship there of some sort, wouldn't you think? I did. So I think that sometimes we don't really understand. People, generally speaking, we don't understand the fact that we are connected in various ways, and not only just with each other, in a collective sense. That's something we understand, okay? We both agree on something. Wow, we're so connected. But sometimes we don't understand that we have what I mentioned in that clip, a universal mind, which is also scientifically called a superconsciousness, in which we really don't have a limitation in terms of space-time or dimension. And so consequently, there's a level of communication that is going on that level outside of our ability to even know that conversation's going on. So that topic is what we discussed in terms of ancient visionary experience, and here what was going on with you was something that, from my perspective, was aligned with that understanding.
I hope you don't mind. I'm going to bring Jolene in here now. And she doesn't make it much on the show, but our audience loves it when she does come on. What do you recall?
Hello, Jolene. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. Thank you. I appreciate you coming by. I really am excited to hear your experience that night.
Well, exactly. And what was going through your reaction when all of a sudden you got that text from me, and you're, what, 30 feet away from me, 40 feet away from me, and all of a sudden you're comfy in bed. You know, the little guy was probably a year, oh goodness, not even a year old. He was like 8 months old, 9 months old. And,
something like that, yeah.
And you were putting him to bed, and you'd crawled into bed yourself, and all of a sudden you get a text from me saying, "Get in here now, alien at the window."
Yeah, I was kind of like, what the heck is going on, Dave? What is going on? And then you were pretty much, well, for lack of a better term, crapping your drawers.
Yes, I was.
Yes, you were.
Yeah. You immediately, Jolene, when you came into the room that night, you immediately picked up on something. Like, your game was on.
Yes.
And for people who don't know, Jolene, I never mess with her, Harvey, because she's quite empathic. She knows. I've only been able to fool her once, and that was the day I proposed to her. Twice.
My 40th birthday.
Oh, yes, your 40th birthday party as well. Okay. And the day we got engaged in Las Vegas. And otherwise, I just don't try things with her because she knows me inside and out so well that it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it. And you know, when you got a good woman, you know what that's like.
This is true. Don't mess with me, Dave.
Oh, goodness. Threats on the air. Threats on the air. But when I look at it, when she came in the room with her empathic abilities, you were picking up stuff the minute you opened up that door, or was it before?
Definitely before and when I opened the door. It was stronger when I opened the door, obviously, because the being was like right out the window.
Yeah. So take us through that. When you got the text message, and did you quickly get out of bed and run down the hall, or how did that work for you?
Well, I was like, what the heck, Dave? So then I kind of walked down the hallway. Actually, I don't think I ran. I think I walked. And then I was like, ooh, there's some funky energy going on. And then when I opened the door, there was definitely lots of energy.
So for the people who are not empathic, who are listening tonight, what does that feel like when you opened up the door? Like, you're sitting around the studio now. How does it feel compared to back then when you walked in?
You know when you walk into a place and you just get this vibe, and you're like, whoa, what is going on here?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. You immediately put your hands up because you feel a lot of energy through your hands.
I feel heat. That's kind of what it feels like. It feels like heat and cold. There's a lot of heat going on, if that's a good way to describe it.
And Harvey, Jolene's someone who always has cold hands. And I remember that she put her hands up to the window, and then she says, "Oh my God, my hands are just burning right now." And she put her hands on me, and like the palms of her hands were red, were absolutely red. And she put her hands on me, and they were hot. And so then I had to ask you the next question. So she runs out of the room, grabs the Palo Santo wood, grabs the sage, starts running around the house, dousing every door and window that we have in the home. But that's what happened on this end when you were, being the pro that you were, Harvey, listening in and just answering the questions that I was giving you.
Well, like I said, first of all, Jolene, great. I think what I get from it is the connection not only to what Dave saw, but that there is an energy that is related to it now. And that's part of what I look at is not so much just appearance, but what kind of frequency, energies, light, sound, what is happening that indicates that there is some kind of strong vibrational occurrence going on. And for people who don't know this, just scientifically, most recently they discovered that super small scale particles in existence, like the smallest possible particle that they've ever seen, is also actually energy that it's called a neutrino, that it oscillates, it vibrates, and through its vibration can actually change what they call flavors, or we could call it personalities, or we could call it archetypes, that even at the very lowest, smallest scale that we could possibly know about, in nature, vibration and transformation is going on. So now imagine that on a super scale, not so much from the standpoint of technology, which how we tend to see things because we live in a technological age, but more in terms of something natural, something that exists, but on a whole other plane of existence that is right side by side with us, but that we often just don't see. And here you're describing an experience that fits that kind of understanding.
So getting back to when you, after the interview was done, because we were only doing 2-hour interviews back then, when you hung up the phone and you and your wife started talking, because I know I remember you asking point blank, you said, Dave, can I ask you, what exactly did you see? And I told you exactly what I saw was the big black eyes with the gray head. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, when we hung up the phone that night, what was going through your mind and what was your reaction? Because obviously you would have talked it over with your wife as well.
My reaction was not to question whether it happened or didn't happen, or what you saw. I think that in my mind there is something going on which we just don't fully comprehend at a level of reality that most of us live in. It's as if something or someone from your superconscious or unconscious mind actually step into your consciousness for a moment and then step back out. And that's kind of what we talked about on my end.
Well, I do know this, my friend. You are in Spaced Out Radio lore with that story, and that story will continue. right through until we decide to call this show quits, or I decide to retire, or whatever. So I'm glad you were there, my friend. I am glad you were there, because it was an honestly traumatic experience, and I'm going to say traumatic in a non-painful sort of way. But when you have something happen like that, Harvey, and I'm sure you've talked to many experiencers who have had some sort of interaction with something that's technically not supposed to exist. Have you noticed a pattern in the way people are when they, or how they react when they have an experience that they just can't explain?
Yeah, I think that seems to be questioned today, but as a historian, and when I study visionary aspirations from ancient times, this was a profession. Becoming a visionary and a seer, and being able to look through the Oxys Mundi. Oxys Mundi is an ancient term for like a pipeline that connects the world vertically, the above, the middle, and below. And ancient seers would use that pipeline, and they believed that their minds, if they were strong enough in their cosmic mind, that they could essentially be like a roaring lion and then open up space like a wormhole and be able to see through it. It is that experience that they had that then they come back and they say, well, I was able to see heaven. I was able to visit various other dimensions of existence, and then they'd come back and they'd be able to talk about it and write literature about it. I'm still shocked by the fact that this kind of sophisticated literature is the oldest literature we know in civilization. In other words, how do you explain that? Every story we have in every kind of movie, all of the myths and the stories that we have today are based on these ancient stories that have been here for thousands of years, that were recorded through visions of seers. They are sort of packaged in religion today, which is why I think a lot of us sort of have kind of a distant connection to that kind of thing. But if you put aside the religious aspects of ancient stories, really what you're looking at is multidimensional activity of beings on various levels of existence, something that we are talking about now.
It was one of those heavy evenings, my friend, that will stick with me probably forever. When you have memories like that, do you, as a researcher and a writer, question how much is actually the mind playing tricks, or how much did they actually see? Because there is always three sides to every story. There's the experiencer's side, there's the truth, and then there's the imagination side as well.
That's right, and what we are calling in wisdom in ancient terms, or enlightenment in ancient terms, is the development of skill that has to do with high level of awareness and discernment, so that deception itself is something that the visionary seer can see very clearly, whereas maybe an individual without that skill would be easily deceived. So that being the case, the stories that are told in ancient times are not meant to be stories that they necessarily imagined. but that they're written in a dream language. In other words, they're using symbols and they're using all kinds of poetic devices and mixing it with historical devices and mixing it with divine beliefs and religion, and all of that is intertwined to be able to describe what happened. But the actual experience of the seer itself is something that only the seer can truly fathom. The rest of it is limited by the ability to tell what happened.
Well, I can tell you what's happening in the chat room now. We have a bunch of listeners who are going to try a mass conscious effort to try and connect with Carl and get Carl to show up at the studio here. That would be kind of fun if that happened. I'm not going to lie. And I'm a firm believer in mass consciousness. I think we could absolutely get things done if all of us put our minds to it. Do you think something like mass consciousness could work in something along these lines?
Well, I think it definitely can work, but it does take a great deal of focused energy to make it work. Wishing is only step one in the process. I think we also discussed in that previous show about the Buddha's method of creating shared visions, in which he's opening up a vision like in a wormhole, and they're looking into another dimension. One, incidentally, that is in my book, The Waker, where he's describing a colossal cosmic garden of life. Is that an imagination, or is it symbolic of something that really is in some form or another? We tend to get stuck on the form and on the description rather than its implication and meaning. So from the standpoint of when you're dreaming something, you think you're imagining it, but then you find out that maybe this imagination actually has meaning in your life. So consequently, is the dream some false deception going on in your head, or is it a vehicle in which it captures your wisdom and your emotion and so on? So I think that trying to divide those two things in itself isn't really helpful, because what we're really talking about is that real visionary experience is something that is very authentic, and in the eyes of ancients is actually the truth, and that the reality that we know as the three-dimensional reality is really an illusion, a hologram that we call reality, but that deeper inside us, in our higher consciousness, is where reality resides, a reality that is all-encompassing and where we're all part of a communication system and an infrastructure of life.
So how much of that story, and I realize it was my experience, Jolene's experience, and you being third party to it, how much of it did you believe?
I didn't necessarily need to believe or not believe, Dave. I would say that it fit within my understanding of a higher level reality.
Well, that higher level of reality sure almost made me soil my shorts. I'm going to tell you that. You know, I mean, that's the truth of it, because in the end there are three parties, and you know, it was one of those moments. I wish I had Periscope or Facebook Live or something going on, you know, in regards to that, but. And we only got about 5 minutes before we have to go to break here. But in the end, did you feel any differently afterwards, when you maybe the next day or two after sat back and just kind of thought about what was going on? Because I know for the next couple of weeks that was on my mind fully. And to this day, I wonder, will it happen again?
Yes, it was on my mind. At first, not so often, but the incident itself triggered something in me that I would just say kind of shot me off on a different exploration, which is not so much focused on our existence here on Earth, which is incredible in its own right that we even exist, but that everything that we are as human beings may have some other kind of expression somewhere else in the universe. And I sort of coined that term in my own mind as humoid, which basically is an expression of the ability of a species to be able to think and conceive and relate as we do, based on sentience meaning senses, that our senses of the outside world is all connected to our internal consciousness. The one cannot work without the other. So sentient beings are often mentioned in Buddhist literature as beings that can exist throughout the universe, not just here. So that kind of opened up this whole world of deciding to write a book about humoid beings that live on some other planet with a whole other category of experiences that are happening to them. And I'm sure we'll get into that later, but I'm just trying to answer your questions as of the moment.
Oh, no worries. We have about 90 seconds before we have to go to break. I'm very happy that you were the guy, Harvey. I really was happy that you were the guy on the other side when we did this, because to hear how you listened, to what had happened, and then you got to hear the firsthand account immediately after the show, the way you were able to put it in a spiritual text of maybe that was meant to happen, or maybe that was supposed to be some sort of sign, it is absolutely great that it was you. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you, because I feel also honored to have been part of the experience, and I don't feel that experience was something that happened strictly physically around you, that there was let's just call it an aura of that experience that included me in it. So I'm very thankful, especially since what came out of it for me.
And Harvey, I'm going to get you to hold on, because we are going to step out for our first break of the night. Harvey Kraft is our guest. His website, BuddhaFromBabylon.com. And we're going to call in Carl as well. Carl the Alien, I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Come on out. Come say hello to Harvey, myself, and Jolene. We are waiting for you. We'll be back with Spaced Out Radio right after this.
From coast to coast to coast, Blacklight Uncharted is taking on the paranormal across Canada. From ghostly hauntings to the UFOs flying above in conjunction with MUFON Canada, we're closely investigating what's going on in the northern skies and checking out the apparitions that walk among us. Check out our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com. We want to know your thoughts, we want to hear your experiences, and we want you to share your stories. The answers are out there, and we intend to find them.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
Looking for news beyond the mainstream news? Head to spacedoutradio.com and check out the SOR Spacewire. This is Spaced Out Radio's Eric Markham, News Director for the SOR Spacewire. Daily, I will bring you intriguing stories and outlandish reports from what's going on around the world. UFO sightings, paranormal activity, conspiracies, alternative health, and so much more. And if you have news, email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Have you had an experience you can't explain? Had a run-in with ghosts, maybe Bigfoot, or seen lights in the sky? Hi, I'm Mike Schmidt from the SOR Sightlines. I'm here to investigate your sighting. Head to spacedoutradio.com and fill out a report on the Sightlines. All your information is 100% confidential, and I will help you figure out what you've been seeing. File your report, and let's find out the answers together.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Have you got your Cosmic Passport? If you need one, tune in to Cosmic Passport on Spaced Out Weekend. This is Elizabeth Anglin, ET experiencer, spirit medium, and host of Cosmic Passport. Each weekend I'll be bringing you interviews and support from other paranormal experiencers and the best in intuitive spiritual guidance from across the globe. It's all happening starting at 9 p.m. Pacific Time, midnight Eastern, on spacedoutradio.com.
From British Columbia to Northern California, Pacific North Weird has Cascadia covered. Check out our feature videos at spacedoutradio.com, where I, Vincent Zunza, and my super sleuth partner Alexandra Sullivan track down the weird and strange stories from around the Pacific Northwest. From Bigfoot to Mel's Hole and everything in between. This is what makes life exciting. So why report the normal when we can report the Pacific North Weird right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Oh, there's only one way to rock. Loud and proud. In high definition. Radio 702 rocks. Las Vegas.
Every Saturday and Sunday night, as Dave Scott wanders aimlessly in the wilderness, you can come hang out with me, James Tyson, in Spaced Out Weekend. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I'll take you along as we talk with some of the best experts in their fields. SpacedOutRadio.com is the place to find us. So sit down, relax, put your feet up. Enjoy the topics like the paranormal, supernatural, intuitiveness, and so much more. Hope to see you there.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. And hit us up on Twitter using the hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Welcome back to the second hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Tomorrow night on the show, Dr. Rita Louise is going to join us. We're going to talk about holy deception and how it turns into the whole extraterrestrial content. It's going to be a great show with the doctor, who is very famous in the speaking circuit, especially Contact in the Desert, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time tomorrow on spacedoutradio.com if you are checking it out. No, I am not looking at hockey stats right now, Ronald. Thank you for asking if that's what I was doing during the break. But no, not doing that at all. Hey, if you want to follow us on social media, you can do so on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Use the hashtag Spaced Out Radio if you want to connect with me live during the show, as well as our other listeners. You can give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download this show and others on iTunes. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for just $5 a month. We want to welcome in everyone in the chat rooms, including on Revolution Radio. The Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. We are also live in Las Vegas on Renegade Talk Radio and live on the United Public Radio Network on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. Good to have you along for the ride as well. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Onomatopoetic. I'm sure it has something to do with onomatopoeia. But onomatopoetic is your password. Make sure you use it wisely, space travelers, because you need it for tonight. Harvey Kraft is our guest tonight, famed author. BuddhaFromBabylon.com is his website, his latest book, The Waker. I highly suggest you pick this one up. Harvey is a 5-star author. He's a good one, deep thinker. It's a good book for you to get. Harvey, welcome back.
Good to be back with you, Dave.
Absolutely. We love having you back. In the first hour, we were talking about, and we dominated the talk about what had happened on April 20th, 2015, when you were on this show, when I had an extraterrestrial appear at the window. Before that incident, were you a big believer in extraterrestrial life?
Well, let me see. 1970... like many other people in that time, went to see Chariots of the Gods, Van Daniken's documentary. And it just opened up so many questions for me because this idea that we have remnants in ancient archaeology of possible visitation was something that was intriguing to me. It's actually one of the reasons I started studying ancient spirituality, to go along with the need to understand beyond just the archaeological evidence what was the way that ancient people viewed the cosmos. Does it fit with what might be considered a retro rewrite of ancient history by basically saying aliens as we know them were there then? I studied history in order to find out something else about how they thought, which was they never talked about there being people in spacesuits, and in fact, the bodhisattva, celestial bodhisattvas in ancient Buddhist literature, they don't have wings. They have reward bodies. They have bodies that essentially are light bodies, a gift from the universe that allows them to cross at unimaginable speeds from one place to another. In fact, one of those celestial bodhisattvas is known in Chinese Buddhist mythology as Kuan Yin, and that particular individual responds to people when they're crying for help. And so the notion here is that there is a being that is able to travel transdimensionally and respond to where people are calling for help. That in itself is basically a more sophisticated idea in terms of aliens, because it gives them a motivation, whereas today we're looking at aliens more from the standpoint of beings that are either interested in conquering us or destroying us or eating us, and all of that comes into various stories and experiences then that people have, including their technology that people observe. From the standpoint of ancient writings, however, these aliens from ancient time had the ability to project. They could project themselves. They could project a body. There are stories about a particular alien that was testing the Buddha when he was young, and he projected a monster in front of him, and the monster threatened to eat him because the Prince Buddha was asking a question, and the only way the monster would respond is he would give him the answer, but he would have to agree to be eaten. This is a classic Buddhist story, and basically what it reveals is that either we're talking about some fiction and imaginative idea of a story, or the story is actually hiding in the unconscious a reality that extends beyond our natural experience here.
So would you then say that people are seeing beings or having an experience with beings from another planet, or do you think it's all part of their own consciousness and imagination?
I think it's both. And I hope that that's okay to say that. What I'm saying is that the consciousness, a higher consciousness, is the vehicle for seeing. That other than that, there is a projection going on. We actually live in a projected world, okay? I can prove it very simply but scientifically to say that if our body is basically made of atoms, atoms are mostly space, just like a solar system. It's mostly space. With particles within it that form by fusion, that themselves have particles of particles of particles. So ultimately, scientifically, we're talking about string theory and saying that below the surface of our mortal form world are vibrating strings, and it is the vibrations of the strings that actually brings about what we consider to be a reality where we perceive everything as material. But that isn't necessarily the truth about what reality is. And so if you were a rather advanced civilization that has already evolved to the point where you've crossed you crossed into an enlightened understanding of how the universe works, of which, we're rather egotistical, our science is, by thinking that we're so advanced when in fact our science is just really like baby science compared to what our capacity is from the standpoint of the conscious mind. So my point being that there are beings and there is consciousness, and the two intersect.
So when you sit back and you take a deep look and a scientific, research-filled look at the contact of extraterrestrials, albeit benevolent or malevolent. Do you think then that the experience people are having is something they are bringing on themselves, or something that is preordained with the soul and the spirit?
I think the context with which they are bringing it in to their consciousness is colored by their own condition. In other words, it's like you have glasses with different prescriptions, and they will alter what you see around you. So there is a certain amount of filtering that is going on because of your condition. So that being the case, that isn't necessarily mean that you're imagining something, because you have no way to be able to get your head around something that is happening on a trans-dimensional level. So you might intuit that, you might get the vibes, and you might sort of get the feelings, or you might be a skilled visionary person, and you've developed your skills to be able to see further and better and deeper and more profound understanding. That means that you are essentially tapping into a more advanced evolutionary stage, which is a higher consciousness. In my view, right now on Earth, we are undergoing a major, major awakening. Many people are saying it. We're not just talking about economic, religious. We're talking about how human beings see themselves, what we're capable of, what our potential is, whether we are going to let machines take over. We don't need to be invaded from outside forces if we're going to basically create Trojan horse amongst us to sort of end what a human being is. The crime of that would be only because human beings so far, from an evolutionary standpoint, are using less than 10%, maybe 5% of our brain, but beyond brain, like brain is an airport. Consciousness is like the system of airplanes flying all over the world. So just in terms of an analogy, what a human being is capable of, we're only at the very beginning. So the problem is that a lot of us have been sort of brainwashed to think that we're not worthy, or we don't have the ability to see beyond what we see now. But in fact, I think as technology develops, one of the greatest uses of technology that's coming to us, like VR technology, is to be able to use it to educate our mind, to open our minds, to become more aware, more conscious, more discerning, more skilled, so that whatever machines we create are not going to be as advanced as us. So just the recognition of that it's necessary to allow life to evolve, is something that beings that have already evolved will have an understanding of. So they don't have a need to conquer us. They don't have a need to interfere. The only need they might have is a need of concern that maybe we are going to get waylaid or lost, or somehow not be able to do the job of evolving. But other than that, I don't really think that a more highly evolved being is going to be interested in doing a sin. If that is the case, they probably would have done it already. So to your question, there is a projection of consciousness, but it isn't making anything up as much as it is colorizing what it senses that's beyond the present.
So let's say you're meeting with somebody who has never had an experience in their life, and all of a sudden they're dreaming about extraterrestrials and being on spaceships and being taken either spiritually or physically. When you hear stories like that, and I'm assuming you've looked into them with your research, how do you go about telling if the person is having a vision from the imagination comparatively to one that is reality?
Right. Well, I think that that's part of what I'm trying to address, that there are what I would say many experiences that would fall into the nightmarish category. Would you agree?
You know what? I will agree with that. But here's something that I have learned. I really believe, Harvey, that those experiences are different compared to the country you live in. And that's something very unscientific, but it's something that I have noticed, considering most of our listeners are in the United States and Canada, mostly the United States, where the idea of extraterrestrial contact is very, very negative south of the border for the most part. Yet up here, the people who are having contact, I would say 8 out of every 10 are having some sort of positive contact.
Yes, I was just categorizing the difference between those two. So there are, as you said, people who are having, say, abduction experiences, or the kind of X-Files type experiences that are associated by many people in terms of the mass media, especially, with extraterrestrial experience. So the question is not just are they having a real experience and not a real experience, but are we actually identifying a real experience in some other way? In other words, that there is a touchstone within the consciousness that has to do with the condition that we're in. So in other words, if I walk into a room and let's say there is a party, I see a lot of people having fun, but maybe somebody that I wanted to see at the party didn't show up, and it bummed me out. And so from the rest of the evening, what I see is going on in the party is that it's just a miserable party. Okay, so the party is actually happening and it's happy, but my perception of it is colored by my condition. So does that make sense in terms of an analogy of what's going on?
I think it does. I think it makes perfect sense in regards to, what is happening, because it's always changing. Nobody's experience is the same. It may be similar, but that's what we need to study, though, is it not? Those similarities that lead us to whatever that answer may be, on a spiritual sense or on a reality sense. Could I be correct on that?
Yeah, I think you can definitely be correct on that. There are probably the one thing that I always try to impress on people who are looking into this is that what we don't know is probably much, much bigger than we realize. Because just imagine all the scientific discoveries we've had just the last 50 years about the cosmos. I mean, it's really the extent and speed with which we are receiving information about the universe. It is huge, and it has a tremendous impact on the collective mind and individual experiences that we have as human beings, that we're receiving all this information. Suddenly we know that the universe is beyond our ability to even comprehend in terms of space. There are more galaxies than there are billions of people on Earth. There's 7.3 billion, I believe, right now. But that number is a small, tiny fraction of the galaxies up there. And when we're talking about galaxies now, like the Milky Way, not just a star. So the extent of the scope of everything is so tremendous. And here we are right now scientifically discovering exoplanets, like this week in the news, right? A star some light years away with 7 planets around it. So, of course, the first question is there life? And that will be followed by another question, which is there intelligent life? And that can be followed by a third question, which is there advanced life? And then another question, which is there life that transcends the dimensional restrictions that we are living in? So these are open questions that have a lot to do with where people experience. And Dave, as you said, I read that the Northwest and United States has more sightings than probably the rest of the country combined. It says something also about the kind of collective consciousness of the people in that part of the world. You're all basically connecting in some way and creating an energy vortex that may be attracting a certain amount of attention.
I have a question from you, or for you, from Eric in the Space Out Radio chat room on Spreaker. And he is asking, Harvey, do you fear what Kurzweil calls the singularity, where we merge with our technology?
I don't fear it. I just have a very clear perspective about it. First of all, let me say that Kurzweil is an advocate of essentially achieving immortality. And that in itself, which is this notion that we want to conquer life and achieve immortality and fuse with the machine into some kind of cyborg being, is kind of a reminder of the Mary Shelley story about Dr. Frankenstein, who wanted to conquer life and achieve immortality, the same as Kurzweil. And Mary Shelley wrote that book as a warning. She wrote that book as a warning, not so much based on the what's going to happen in the future, but the stuff that poisons mind throughout history. We've had pharaohs and other emperors who believed that they would join some kind of an elite of royalties that control us all from some other part of the universe, that the pharaoh his soul would go through a stargate, and on the other side of that stargate would be all the other pharaohs who are ruling the entire universe. So the question is that concept of immortality something that makes sense for us as human beings today? And I go back to what I said earlier, and that is, why would you want to achieve a singularity that would basically wipe out the ability of human beings to evolve?
It's almost like the old book 1984. And when we look at that book that was written so long ago, 33 years ago, it's amazing how that book has pretty much almost come to fruition at this point.
Yeah, that book was about propaganda and mind control. So, and the domination. So we have a 5,000-year history of authorities who subscribe to domination, rule with military force over the people. And that has only morphed from one empire to another, but always basically looking to dominate. So no wonder we're afraid that we're going to have an invasion from from somewhere else that's going to want to dominate us. But the point we're making is that that whole notion, that whole need to dominate and become supreme in control over others is actually a place of fear that I'm going to kill you before you have a chance to kill me. It's a very predatory and reptilian kind of behavior, one that we're just maybe on the verge of beginning to understand that we can evolve to a higher consciousness. And by doing so, we can learn the skills of harmonizing. Just like, when you, at the same time that the Buddha lived, you had Pythagoras, and he talked about the planets rotating and creating a sound, or creating a harmony amongst themselves. So we have a lot to learn from these ancient visionaries, because they were much advanced in regards to their higher consciousness, and we sort of sold out of higher consciousness and replaced it with machines and various medicinal stimulants, and we're capable of so much more.
Now, I don't know if this is coincidence or imagination or not, but I have a couple pictures right on my ledge that looks out my back window. And I swear, as you were talking, I just saw a shadow move on the outside of that window. Maybe Carl is here.
Why not?
I don't know. I'm hoping. Hey, Carl, if that's you, come on in. You can go through walls. You guys are good at that. But that kind of just stunned me there for a quick second. I don't know.
Well, there you are. The point is that you and I and everybody listening in, we are connecting here just by virtue of what we're talking about on a higher energy level from the standpoint of the universal cosmic frequencies, which is going to tend to attract attention. It's going to produce certain movements, and that can be around you because that's what you want. You asked for this, so what is manifested is partly manifest because of your desire to have it so. And that desire, when it's on a higher level consciousness, is that much more powerful. And you had your group over there that was joining you, part of the audience in that consciousness group.
Mass consciousness could be working here tonight. I'm waiting for Carl to turn on my sensor light that I have, because it looks into my carport, and I have a sensor light there. So hopefully Carl can turn that on. If that light goes on, I'm not going to lie, Harvey, I may scream. You know,
I think you will.
Scream.
I think you will for sure.
Yes.
So that's your way of saying, Carl, don't turn on that light.
Oh, I don't mind if Carl does. You know, I really don't. And to be honest, I'm watching where that is now.
I'm trying to like give you a little tip, Dave. Okay? And that is that when the fear comes up, okay, it blocks things from happening.
Well, let's get some positivity in, because I'm like nervously anticipating here. Nervously anticipating.
Yes, why not? And whatever happens, right?
Exactly.
So
that's the only way we can do it.
But we're having a conversation about things that are outside the realm of what most people talk about at work, right?
Exactly.
Unless they're working on the, trying to solve consciousness or cosmological issues. Most people, they deal with life on an everyday basis. You have to put the diaper on the kid, and you have to fix that hinge on the door. So when we start talking about stuff like this, we're raising people's consciousness to someplace where they're not usually sitting in. Okay, most of us, when we think about other beings, we sort of imagine them. We don't, even if we believe in it, there, like you mentioned earlier, there is a question: is it my imagination, or am I being deceived, or what's going on? There's confusion. So what I'm trying to do tonight with you is kind of help people understand that there is a superseding system of existence that covers the entire universe and beyond the universe. There is even a lot going on beyond the universe at every level of scale. So it's huge. And so if your head is blowing up, that's okay. Mm-hmm. Right now, I think we're trying to look at this event that you had, Dave, not just as a accidental happening or some scary stuff, but as a signal that we're connecting with a larger level of consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Then again, it could be my neighbor Tony who just wanders over every now and again. But on a serious level, manifestation has to have some sort of play in what we do collectively on a daily basis.
Right. So science is based on the law of cause and effect, and the first person to ever talk about the law of cause and effect was the Buddha. And basically, the idea is that the only reality is the present. And the present, because of time, keeps changing. From one moment to the next, it's a different present. Mm-hmm. But every present moment has within it the effect of every other moment that came before it. So this moment is the totality of everything that has ever happened up to now. And at the same time, this present moment that is constantly changing has in it the cause for everything that will ever happen going forward. Mm-hmm. So the Buddha was able to pierce the present by saying that middle between past and future that we is so thin and so momentary that we can't even like cut it into a piece. You know what I mean? The how long is the present? Nobody can answer that question. It moves too fast. Mm-hmm. But yet it's the only reality we exist in. We don't exist in the past and we don't exist yet in the future. The only place is the present. So the Buddha then, when he was talking about the present, he called it the void or the emptiness. And that emptiness or that void was a portal. And that portal he then opened up to say, let's go into a dimension that exists within the present that is not limited by the relative fields of past or future or here or there. That there is an ultimate present that is all-inclusive. And that includes all the beings everywhere across all of existence in whatever condition that these beings may appear. And that all of this motion and commotion that's going on here is all for the sake of evolving until we achieve the ultimate in terms of enlightened higher consciousness. In other words, we understand the full story of what's going on, who we are, where we are, why we are doing what we're doing, all of the philosophical questions that people ask that somebody says there's no answer to that. All of that is contained within our life. So our job is to explore and develop ourselves. And ultimately, as we do, we can make contact with others who are basically communicating with us on that level of transdimensional consciousness.
Mm-hmm. So when it pertains to people who are having the extraterrestrial experience, what about those who are having troubles remembering the experience? They say they've been blacked out or blanked out in their memory of it, but can recall it in some sort of regression therapy. Are we storing this image of what happened deep in the conscious because we're afraid, or we just don't understand, or because it's fear-based?
Well, it can be any one of those things, of course. That said, when we're born, we have no memory of anything. But if what I'm talking about makes any sense at all, the human being itself is a manifestation of a database that continues in a non-local sense in the universe itself, and it manifests and then it recedes back to the formless state, and then again reappears somewhere else in the universe in the form state. So in other words, there's no difference between us as a life being than any other alien anywhere else in a universe or multiverse. That we all are part of this same system. And so consequently, life itself is something that needs to be understood beyond just a biological sense, but that life has a spiritual essence that is carried across. So we could talk about multiple lifetimes, and carrying across those multiple lifetimes, sometimes we have a breach in the veil that appears in our mind when we're born, so that what we can experience could be past life experience, could also be something that has transported our consciousness, or in fact could even be the experience of another being that we are aligned with or connected with at that moment, so we don't even sense that there is a separation between them and us. All of those possibilities are there.
Got a question from Eric for you. He is saying, Harvey, do you believe that the big questions can be answered, or is the universe unknowable?
Yeah, that's a really hard question, but fairly straightforward answer, and that is, obviously, there are a lot more answers, but to say that at some point in time you will know everything exactly as is, that is something that is achieved on a very, very high level of consciousness. In other words, you have to evolve far in advance of where we are now for all of existence to become knowable. Is it possible for a human mind to evolve to that point in the present lifetime? The answer to that is yes, because when we talk about physical evolution, we know it's a very slow process in which we react to survival threats with physical modifications and mutations in the DNA that then allows us to genetically reprogram so that we could survive. But that is a process that takes a very long time, as we know. That is not necessarily the case with consciousness. Consciousness can evolve at a much greater rate in in certain respects. So in that sense, the universe, in some, let's just call it a poetic sense, can be knowable.
Another question for you here. Do you think, Harvey, that there is some validity to the M theory in which the multiverse is separated by some sort of thin membrane?
Yeah, I'm not a scientist, so that is derived through theoretical physics and mathematics. And it is a particular theory that underlines the understanding that there is a multiverse. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you hear theories about there being sheets or membranes, and sometimes you hear it as bubbles, with one element of a bubble touching another bubble or whatever. There is a description in the ancient Buddhist sutras in which I think I mentioned it in a previous show, in which in order to have everybody that ever existed come together in one present, eternally present moment, the amount of space needed was many times greater than the universe could hold. So since we don't know how big the universe is, or what we basically consider is that the universe is really populated is like a ball, and that when we look into the past, we look into the center of that ball, and that the present is how far the universe has expanded on top of that ball. So we don't even have any concept of what kind of space the universe is expanding within, since we're inside it. So we don't even know what we really even mean by multiverse. I mean, the universe, for all we know, could be a tiny little marble pebble in relation to everything else. And there could be, unbelievable amount of space between universes, just like there is between stars. Or, on the other hand, there is membrane theory, which basically tries to explain the Big Bang by saying that when two membranes touch, it can cause a reaction that gives birth to another universe. Mm-hmm. And whether that theory is true or not, I certainly don't have information about that.
Mm-hmm. So when it comes to the theory of interdimensions and interdimensional travel, do you believe then that whether it's extraterrestrial, whether it's spiritual, whether it's on some sort of realm, that there is this possibility that there is interdimensional travel happening one way or another?
Right, but there again, what we talk about when we talk about travel in scientific terms is limited, because in scientific terms you cannot travel any faster than the speed of light, and you're crossing space, and because space and time are related to one another, you're compressing time and so on. When you're talking about dimension, scientifically, we have theories of 11 different dimensions, and we don't know what they are beyond our, say, the 4 dimensions that we are familiar with. So without knowing what we're even talking about when we say the word dimension from a scientific standpoint, we can only talk about it in some kind of obscure mathematical sense. But I think that the Buddha created a theory of infrastructure in which he explained that all of existence is built of three parts, essentially, that are integrated and inseparable from one another. And they are the universe or field of form, the field of formlessness, and the field of desire. So the universe as we know it in its dimensional structures is the field of form. The field of formlessness are additional dimensions that are not defined by form. They may be defined by things like consciousness. Then what we have is the field of desire, without which there is no prime mover. It is actually desire that drives everything. If you look at it, even an atom has the desire to move and to do what it needs to do. Everything has a desire as part of its internal mechanism. And so, therefore, the universe is such that we have a body. Personally, we have a body. That's our form. We have thoughts and emotions that are formless. We can't really touch them or put them in a box. We have desires that cause us to want to get up out of bed in the morning and live life. So those attributes, in one sense, is that we ourselves are made of the same infrastructure as the universe itself.
Question coming from... Sorry, go ahead. Continue.
Go ahead, please.
Question from Trip in one of our chat rooms here. He is asking, Harvey, then, what's your thoughts on Jesus visiting Buddha, or Jesus could be Buddha?
Yeah, there is... I found in the Buddhist scriptures at least 20 very specific examples of theologies that are then appear in Buddhism, in Christianity. And that the overwhelming connection of Buddhism and Christianity, there is one from a historical point of view, but also one in which the story of Jesus and the story of the Buddha are very much aligned. For example, Jesus had an immaculate birth, and the baby Buddha jumped out of his mother's womb at birth and landed and walked on his feet right away. Obviously, these are mythological tales, but they all have a meaning. There's a reason for these stories, and the reason for these stories is, in this particular case, some kind of a being that has entered the world through what's called an advent, that they are meant to arrive, okay? And this is also part of the Buddhist teachings, that there are various Buddhas who make their advents through various points in time in histories on different planets in order to produce teachings that move that planet forward in some way. So that's just very briefly some of the connections that are there between what would be Jesus and Siddhartha Gautama.
Do you think religion on today's basis deals equivalently with what we are talking about scientifically in regards to things like extraterrestrial contact, interdimensional travel, star beings, or multiverses?
I don't think that institutional religion is able to deal with any of those currently. I think that there is a reason why there is a spirituality developing in the world, where, spiritually speaking, people are open to exploring possibilities that may not make sense to a person who is strictly living by the rules of a church or a book. That allows them to believe certain things and sees things that do not fit as either being evil or being, somehow unacceptable because it's not in the book. So what I I'm trying to do is actually connect today's views with not the churches, not the religions, but the original seers, the original visionaries who were able to look at the universe in a really sophisticated way. And it is that connection with religion that connects at the very start of religion before the visionaries got waylaid by institutional authorities and need to dominate and control.
Could it then be the universe's way of learning about itself?
Now you're opening up something that is equating the universe with other. Okay, so in other words, the universe learning about itself is not so much what is going on as much as the universe, in terms of its enlightened divine fullness, is all imprinted into every single element of life. Okay, and so what it is like the seed within us all is of the enlightened highest state. Now, the question is, if we don't even know it's there, then we don't nurture it, we don't, water it, we don't try to germinate the seed so it develops. And this is one of the things, again, back to scientific stuff, is scientists are recognizing how the brain stays healthy through a process called plasticity, which requires exploration and challenge. So in other words, that attribute is built into life. If you don't use it, you lose it. So we need to explore. If we have agendas that are old and don't change and become dysfunctional as a result of that, it's like atrophy of the brain. We have so much yet to learn, and it's only through exploring potentials and possibilities that we could do so. And science is limited because science is essentially empirical. As a result, science right now is kind of morphing into more of a theoretical, mathematical view of things that are as much spiritual, more spiritual actually, than they are scientific. So when you see the alignment of seers from ancient times or seeing things that science is now either theorizing or proving, that's a pretty remarkable connection. For me, it is.
And on that note, Harvey, I'm going to get you to hold on for one moment here because we are going to hop out for our final break of the night here on Spaced Out Radio. Harvey Kraft is our guest. His website, BuddhaFromBabylon.com, and his latest book, which we will get into in hour number 3, The Wakers, is going to be interesting as we start talking about sci-fi, fantasy, and see where that leads us as well. And don't forget, Carl, where are you? Carl the Alien, where are you? We're looking for you. I'm going to be checking on you here momentarily, see if you're hiding outside. So make sure, Carl, you show up, because this show tonight is all about you. We'll be back on Space Out Radio right after the top of the hour. So make sure you stick around and join us. It's going to be a good one. And get your questions going. Don't forget, you can also check out Space Out Radio on Patreon.com. We got some cool features there if you want to check that out. Patreon.com, Space Out Radio. See what we could do. We'll talk to you in just a couple of minutes.
The SOR Sightlines is a place for you to find answers to your strange experiences. Hi there, this is Mike Schmidt. If you have had an encounter with ghosts, UFOs, Bigfoot, ETs, or anything else that doesn't make sense, head to spacedoutradio.com and file a Sightlines report. All information you give is 100% confidential, and I will personally help you find the answers you need. SOR Sightlines, your answers are a click away.
Have you got your Cosmic Passport? If you need one, tune in to Cosmic Passport on Spaced Out Weekend. This is Elizabeth Anglin, ET experiencer, spirit medium, and host of Cosmic Passport. Each weekend I'll be bringing you interviews and support from other paranormal experiencers, and the best in intuitive spiritual guidance from across the globe. It's all happening starting at 9 p.m. Pacific Time, midnight Eastern, on spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski, lead investigator with U4COP. On the final Monday of every month, you can listen to me and host Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio's Strange Days. We're going to get to the heart of the matter when it comes to what's happening out there. People are seeing and experiencing things from ET contact to Bigfoot, and I want to hear about it. Your experiences are what we investigators need to help solve these unknown mysteries. So tune in at spacedoutradio.com to the final Monday of every month from Butch Witkowski's Strange Days.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
This is your medium, Joanna, from Spaced Out Weekend, 2 Mediums and a Large. I would love it if you would come and join us with host James Tyson every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. Together, we will take your calls and your questions live. Our goal is to provide you with a positive outlook on deep questions that you may have. Questions regarding love, relationships, money, or whatever else is on your mind. Come and check us out at spacedoutradio.com.
Have you checked out the SOR Spacewire at spacedoutradio.com yet? Every day we post the latest stories regarding the weird, strange, and completely unbelievable. From cryptid and UFO sightings to the conspiracy world, we tackle it all. Hi there, I'm Eric Markham, Spaced Out Radio's news director for the SOR Spacewire. And if you have a story, I want to hear it. Email me at news@spacedoutradio.com.
Patrolling the Pacific Northwest, we are always on the lookout for the strange and unassuming stories that real people are experiencing. Hi, I'm Vincent Zunza from Pacific North Weird. Me and Alexandra Sullivan have teamed to bring to you those odd stories that never seem to make it into the mainstream. Stories so weird that will leave you scratching your head wondering, is this real? It's as real as it gets with Pacific North Weird. You can watch our videos right here at spacedoutradio.com.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Don't have time to listen to Spaced Out Radio live? Wherever you are, the car, the office, the shower, or even if you're traveling, we're right here for you. Each Spaced Out Radio show can be found on iTunes, TuneIn, and on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's the perfect way for you to catch up on our shows. For more information, just head over to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and tune in to us today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit's story box. The iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
The views and opinions expressed by tonight's guest and topic of discussion do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of Spaced Out Radio, Spaced Out Weekend, Spaced Out Radio Limited, its hosts, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with this broadcast. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and hashtag Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show. Now, back to the program.
A child grew up too fast, went running wild. Now we don't know who to pray to anymore.
Welcome back to the final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Good to have you along for the ride wherever you are on this great planet we love to call Earth. Tomorrow night on the show, we're going to be talking with Dr. Rita Louise. We're going to get into some holy deception. Where that's going, I have no clue. We'll let the doctor tell us all about it tomorrow night starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern time at spacedoutradio.com. Want to welcome in everyone listening in on the United Public Radio Network live on 107.7 FM in New Orleans and over 160 countries around the world. Good to have you with us. We're also live in Las Vegas on Renegade Talk Radio, and we're live on Revolution Radio. The Double R Machine is a donation station financed by you, the valued listener. Head on over to freedomslips.com and donate today. Bill Cardwell has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Onomatopoetic, or a form of onomatopoeia. That is your Spaced Out Radio password of the night. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, because that's the one you're getting for tonight. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, you could do so at hashtag Spaced Out Radio on Twitter, at Spaced Out Radio if you want to give us a follow. You can also give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. Tune us in on TuneIn. Download this show and others on iTunes. We're also on RadioGuide.fm, TalkStream Live, and Stitcher. And our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including joining the SOR Space Travelers Club for just $5 a month. Now, Harvey Kraft joins us for the final time tonight. He's going the distance, and we appreciate that. Harvey, welcome back.
All right, it's good to go another hour with you.
Absolutely,
because I get to talk about my most favorite project right now, which is, as you mentioned before, my sci-fi novel, and I want to say that's also basically it's an e-novel. It's available on Amazon and various other online like Apple iBooks and Google Play and Barnes and Noble and Kobo. So The Waker, it's called The Waker, which is W-A-K-E-R, and that means the one who wakes people up. So The Waker, and then this particular first novel is called Portal of Perfect Light. So I'm just still very excited about having taken all of that historical information and all of these kinds of questions that you've been asking about and putting them into a single narrative, a story that takes place on another planet where a candidate who is trying to achieve enlightenment has been born. And of course, yeah, he faces tremendous challenges. But as he awakens in terms of his abilities, we begin to see that he's connected to a much larger story, which is the story of existence and the universe and the beings who are basically working for the universe to advance evolution.
Mm-hmm. Were you always a sci-fi fan, or was it the whole experience that changed you into one?
Yeah, no, I always admired sci-fi. Of course, you know, I mean, we've grown up at the greatest time where we have Star Wars and Lord of the Rings and like Marvel's Thor, Stargate, Prometheus, Dune, you know, all of these really fantastic films. And also, you know, when I was younger, I read 1984 and Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. I'm sure these are books and films many people have seen. So I've been affected by them like anyone else, but I didn't think of myself as writing a science fiction book until I met Dave.
Yes.
On that fateful night. And that's where this book began to assert itself into my consciousness.
You know, I take a lot of blame for things like this. My buddy Mike, who runs the SOR Spacewire, or pardon me, the SOR Sightlines report around here, we met a number of months ago, and he's like, every time he sees me, he's like, you know, I blame you for all of this. I blame you for what's happening and the experiences he's having now. So it's not the first time I've heard this, but I'm willing to take the blame on this one for you, Harvey. I really am.
Well, I'm sure you understand that I'm not blaming you. In fact, I'm thanking you for inspiring this to come out. Now, people might want to know what does this story have anything to do with your experience? Well, there is a planet in this story, just like ours, essentially at the same point in our own evolutionary development, where there is domination and brutality and people who are, you know, deceitful and want to take control over the world. And then there are those who are maybe of a kinder, gentler state of mind that usually gets stomped on by those others. So one of the challenges that I had in my mind was to look at our own world and say, so could we actually accomplish enlightenment on this planet? Can we, what would it take to turn it around from a place of constant conflict to one of harmony or world peace? As certainly, if our governments of the world all declared world peace tomorrow, we still wouldn't have it because we don't have the consciousness for it yet. We haven't developed a harmonious level of relationships with one another yet. So we have a long way to go, but we also need inspiration to go in that direction. So this book is written to inspire a an engagement with higher consciousness as a power that can overcome the kind of negativity that we see in the world. And by doing that, of course, we have to start with ourselves. And so that's the purpose of why I wrote this book. And to do that, a person who is reading it would be connecting to not only another planet, but that planet exists in the same universe as ours. So they when they look up in the sky, they see stars, just like you do around your home, Dave.
When it comes to the science fiction of it all, I understand you didn't really ever see yourself going down this path, but how much of a difference was your research going into this comparatively to when you wrote Buddha from Babylon?
Well, actually, the research done on Buddha from Babylon served as the underlying story of the Waker. It's just that this time I'm telling it in a way that is independent of our own history, because basically whenever you talk about spirituality and religion and history and all of that, people just want to have an argument. What I'm trying to do is communicate the potential consciousness that we all have and the ability that we all have to educate ourselves in a way that isn't just about knowledge and information, but to educate ourselves to the grander scope of existence. And what that does is release something within people. And so the research I did here is not so much that I had to do research. All I really needed to do is take thousands of year-old sacred literature and be able to say to myself, okay, what if all this took place somewhere else in the universe? What if a Buddha was born somewhere else? What would their world be like? What would the people be like? So in a way, it's mirroring what goes on Earth so that we can understand basically the hero's journey of the Waker, that it takes a tremendous amount of challenge within yourself in order to develop yourself to the point where you can become a Waker and you can help other people become enlightened. So the Waker is about a hero, and there's a love story there. He meets a beautiful princess. They have a son. And this is also a reflection of the Buddha's biography. Siddhartha Gautama becomes a Buddha after he gets married first, and he has a son. So I sort of mirrored image what was going on in his life to create the hero of the Waker. And just like he was able to communicate with beings in other dimensions, the beings that represent those bodhisattvas of other dimensions in my book are called the changers. And they are, their appearance is of a light being that is in a slightly arc form. And one of them is golden and the other one is rainbow lights. And they represent the classic idea that there are basically two beings on either shoulder, which is also a symbol of sacred literature, where the one in the middle is the present and the two on either end are the past and the future. And these light beings are able to cross into any point in time and space and their mission is to help the hero achieve the enlightenment, and that'll be the next thing I'll tell you about.
How much of a difference was it in your writing style to go from something that was very highly researched on a religious level to changing your game more into the sci-fi? Did you find that you had to be more creative than factual?
Well, I have to be honest with you. I was also creative in writing the nonfiction piece because I am an artist. I spent most of my life being a writer and a designer, and even doing art in various ways. So I have an ability to express myself visually, whether it's with words or pictures. So basically what it is I'm seeing it in my higher consciousness, and I'm writing what I'm seeing. And so consequently, since I've read all of the visions of the Buddha, they're already inside me to be able to tap into it. So my creative palette is already pretty rich before I start. And then, yes, then you have to know how to write. And then you have to make sure that the reader is going to be able to follow everything. That said, I sort of try not to have a strictly chronological view of things, because coming in and out of the universe the way the changers do, they could come in at any point in time. So I wanted to convey to the readers through this book that time is a relative idea, and that what happens isn't necessarily chronological, and that the future doesn't always follow the past, that the future can have an impact on what is going on right now. And all of these ideas that we are facing all kinds of obstacles in terms of getting there and evolving there is a big part of this story. But what's important here is that there is a quest, and the quest is not just to conquer, which is what the emperor wants, or the great religious leader who wants to conquer the world and make it the world for his God. But the waker is basically there in order to convey to people the enlightenment of the universe. Maybe if I kind of can I take a minute to sort of read you just the beginning of the book, because I think it might help.
Absolutely. Let's go for it.
Okay, so this is The Waker, Portal of Perfect Light, Chapter 1, called Alert. A ball of light hovered over the head of the Waker. Seated atop a rocky overhang, he spoke to the villagers gathered in the field below on this warm night. His purple tunic with gold trim swayed in the light breeze. His tender yet thunderous voice carried to the last row. Beyond the stars, someone else was watching him make this revelation. Quote, "Once your mind evolves to higher consciousness, the portal of perfect light will open for you. Enter it, and you will be able to see through the boundless eye of the waker. The hidden aspects of your life will become clear and accessible. The eye will unveil to you the essence, nature, and scope of existence." The picture of a colossal garden appeared in the celestial viewfinder. This Empyrean paradise stretched in every direction. Its exotic flowers emitted colorful rainbow light waves, intoxicating fragrances, and lively music. The countless numbers of botanical varieties defied comprehension. Quote, "Behold, the Luma mine treasury, the vast garden of life located below the surface of existence, the Waker declared. What you are looking at is the universal brain of all that was, is, and will be. This garden of life is the cosmic mind. It is the fountainhead of life. It is the ever-evolving generator of consciousness and the ever-creative facilitator of unconscious hopes and dreams, unquote. The awesome adornment and scale of their shared vision replaced any prior sense of awe the onlookers held in their minds. This garden is located in the source dimension at the intersection of the three fields of form, formlessness, and desire that compose the scaffolding of all existence, the Waker said. The floral panorama took their breath away. The gathering gasped unanimously. So that's just the opening of the book, introducing a vision that villagers are able to see that the Waker has projected onto the sky, essentially a wormhole into the source dimension. And this garden of life is basically managed by a headquarters of the Changers, these light beings in the source dimension. And they respond in the first chapter to an alert that has put the planet in danger.
Very intriguing. Very intriguing. If that doesn't get you inspired to buy the book, I don't know what will. I just love the way you're so poetic with your words, my friend. So poetic.
Thank you.
One of the things I want to ask you about, because on Earth here, in our everyday lives, everything revolves around time. When you get into the whole interdimensional space and the time-space continuum, we learn that there really isn't time that goes along with that. So did you try and write this from a zero-time point of view or on a more humanistic state?
Yes, so in the source dimension, this narrative is coming from the source dimension. There are balls of light that are filled with a life energy called Ki, K-E-E, that form this kind of transdimensional computer that the Changers are using. And the story is being told through a compilation of observation about something, the history basically, and the ongoing of what's going on this planet called Sana. So because the Changers can come in and out of any point in time, they set the compilation not so much on a chronological level, but more on the level of what's affecting what. So as the story unfolds, you don't necessarily get, it starts with the birth. It actually starts in the middle of what's going on in terms of the story on the planet. That's because that's important to understand that as a cause for what will follow. So in that way, I was actually playing a shell game with time in writing this book, but making sure that you didn't get lost because of it.
Do you think then that time really is only of the human essence?
We exist in a relative world. Everything that exists is dependent upon something else. This is a quote from the Buddha. Nothing at all in our existence is independent of something else. Okay? It's all integrated, codependent, everything, including time and space and dimensionality. Okay? Then we exist on a certain plane of existence. for example, are everybody's body is itself almost like a universe, because there is the subscales that go on and on and on and on and on. And yet, at the same time, we know by looking out that there is a macro universe. So we exist in the middle between the macro and the micro. We also exist in the middle between the past and the future. Everything else is relative. The only reality we really know is the reality of the here and now. So consequently, here and now is only relative to something else. If there is no past, we have no idea where the hell we are. If there is no future, we don't know where we are. If we think we are actually physically in one place, in actuality, we don't understand that where we are includes nano where we are and cosmic where we are. So our software is written and programmed so that we would be able to negotiate and deal with the reality we are in, so that we can have experiences that help us challenge ourselves to evolve. So time is only a mechanism. It doesn't exist other than relative to us observing it.
So, in the idea of space, where you are traveling into interdimensions, you're traveling through wormholes, so on and so forth, were you able to take the Waker to different planets, to different life systems, in order to try and see what is happening there comparatively to Earth? Or was it just an expanse of seeing what the possibility out there is?
Yeah, so the out there part of it would apply to any planet that would exist in the universe. But the story takes place on one such planet. That said, that planet is undergoing similar experiences as us, and experiences that we have already gone through in many cases, because it is kind of, the experiences are based on the history, the long ancient history of Earth. But at the same time, what is happening is, in that ancient time of Earth that we know existed, there was a connection with the cosmos, as we've talked about earlier today. We had visionary seers who were able to pierce the dimensionality of time, space, and be able to connect across the universe with beings everywhere. So that is what is also happening on this planet. So in a way, it conveys that the kind of life forms that exist, they might exist in a variety of different ways, because appearance is really only a product of whatever the evolutionary resources are in a particular place in the universe. So what is the same is that, for what I mentioned before as humoid, in other words, the software that we have within us that causes to have different conditions and develop in a certain way, that software can be found everywhere else in the universe. So the point of doing this on another planet is to show that here we are on another planet, we have other kinds of beings, but they are basically experiencing things similarly to the way we experience it, and they are looking to connect and understand what is going on beyond just their own little planet. What else is going on? Because on our planet, we got people who just want to, take us over and control us and suppress us. Whereas when you go into what the Waker is attempting to do, he's attempting to liberate and free the minds of the population by introducing them to a much larger picture of what is going on across existence.
Would you stay in this field of sci-fi, fantasy?
I already have a second book that I'm going to work on, which will be another Waker book, and it'll still take place on the same planet, but this story is on the western side of the landscape, and then the second one will take place on the eastern side. But in each case, the visionary fantasy is conveying issues of consciousness. What the Waker is allowing me to do is explore the ability of human beings to reach towards higher consciousness while at the same time having to deal with setbacks and brutality and frustration and challenges and everything else that we have to deal with as human beings. So in other words, it's not like a kind of a religious experience as much as it is a consciousness transforming experience. And that while the Waker is someone that fights to become conscious himself, he is dedicated to liberating his planet, and which is exactly what people are talking about today. We as a population of the world, no matter what your political opinion is, left, right, center, whatever it may be, everybody seems to be honing in on this need for awareness so that we can tell the difference between being deceived and knowing what the truth is. And in order to do that, we have to develop the skill to be able to do that. And the educational and mass media that we have today is not really able to do the job. It's something already from the past. It's still from that era of authoritarian control that we've inherited. And the religions today basically are also just unable to deal with the reality of the way the world is. And so we have a lot of chaos and conflict, but there has to be an alternative to that that is feasible and workable. And my view is that we can't just build technology just for the sake of showing how brilliant we are and, how much more convenient our life can get. That we have to start using technology in order to help us develop the need for freedom and liberation, rather than use technology and, once again, by authorities to dominate us and to brainwash us. So that's the struggle we are in right now. And it's a struggle of consciousness, and it is that struggle that I try to capture in the Waker.
But that can open up so many different angles and views, Harvey, whether it's deception, whether it's governmental, whether it's our own personal beliefs with religion or what we've been taught. How do we bring it all together to be able to look towards what else is out there, especially on a human sense, when we are really living in a 24-hour society where our minds rarely have time to use our imagination anymore?
Right. That's why a lot of people have stopped reading books, or they're reading stuff that's good for work, but the most nourishing works in terms of consciousness are those that actually can help you become more conscious. And that doesn't mean directly by telling you think like this, but rather to liberate your own inner ability to discern. This is something that everybody is capable of, but it requires a certain amount of training and self-transformation. It's something you have to want. And so that kind of seeking spirit that is inside us as human beings is the reason why we are still here on this planet and didn't become extinct ourselves. You know, we have an inborn tenacity to keep fighting and keep moving forward, always looking for knowing more and becoming happier and becoming more fulfilled as human beings, okay? And when we become crazy or violent or whatever conditions that we can fall into, which is also part of the software of capabilities and capacities, those things mean that we are essentially beginning to lose our way. So consciousness is really the tractor beam that puts us back on target. So no matter what conditions or how lost you are or what you think, you know, you don't think much of yourself, as some people don't, all of that doesn't matter if you begin to see that you are alive in this beautiful, amazing universe that where life is everywhere and where you are part of this celebration of life that is taking place on a massive scale. The moment you start thinking like that, your entire outlook on living life here and now will be uplifted. You really can define your own life as something that is itself amazing and miraculous and took, you know, billions of years to develop. You know, the whole universe is evolving, not just us as individually, but the universe itself is alive. It's a living entity, and everything within it is a living entity. It's really a huge revelation that we have at our disposal, and all we have to do is look back at the past, past the religious institutions, right back to the visionaries. And the Waker portal of light captures that. And the enlightenment that's in there, rather than have a Buddha sitting under a tree, the hero of the Waker has to locate a place and time where the portal of perfect light, which connects to the peak of infinity in the source dimension, he has to find that portal and go through it. And there is a guardian that stands in front of that portal when he gets there to stop him from coming through. So there is always something in the way of achieving it. This, too, comes from the story of the Buddha, where he sits under the tree, but all of a sudden he is seduced by a force that tries to get him to come in and achieve enlightenment, and what his reaction is, I don't want to achieve enlightenment just for me. I want to take everybody on the planet with me before I go in. And that kind of altruistic collective awareness is an enlightened view, and the view of the Waker is like that as well. It's not enough for him to go through the portal of perfect light and receive all of the enlightenment of what the universe is about, but he needs to go back home to his planet and bring others to that level of consciousness. And this, too, is about us in that respect, and the responsibility that we all have as human beings to evolve to that next level.
Do you find then when you look into what a person is feeling spiritually, what they are feeling on a cosmic sense, that they have the ability to maybe take their own trip on a spiritual level into different dimensions, into different alternative realities?
Yeah, I believe that depends on sensitivity, on talent, on skill. It's different, like just like some people can dance or sing and some people are not that good, but we can all sing and dance. We're just not at the same level necessarily. So yes, in that respect, I think we all have access to it. But just like a person with talent, they need to practice in order to bring out the talent. And so I think that that's why there are various techniques that people do undertake in order to develop themselves. And I would encourage anybody to do whatever technique that they feel that they need. I also might add that reading a book like The Waker or other books that help lift your consciousness is itself a way of turning on the light within you and being able to use those stories as platforms for your own experience.
So the average person who may not be in contact with their own imagination, their own soul, their own self, how do they awaken themselves without being shoved into it like many people these days are?
Well, that's, the first thing is, no, you can't fix people from the outside, and you can't push them to do something they don't want to do. We are all responsible for ourselves in that regard. Okay? Nobody's going to force you to try to get you to wake up or become a freer person. You have to become conscious enough to say, this is a path I want to go in, and I'm going to look for ways in which I could do that. That's a healthy way to live. I think that as our current generation grows up and additional generations come up in the next 20 to 50 years, and your little one grows up, each generation grows up in a world with more and more information and more opportunities available to develop. Now, all you got to do is think back 100 years and, people were didn't know very much. Just the average person didn't know very much compares to what most people know today, who are not necessarily have any degrees, just a common person. If you compare what the common person has been exposed to today, it's miles ahead. But then if you're an individual that recognizes the value that higher consciousness will give you, and that if you really want to be happy, it's not a matter of getting another raise, it's a matter of raising your consciousness to that level where you're joyful because of what you could see is really going on. And I think that's why I wrote this book. I wrote the book, The Waker, because the whole point is to fight in order to awaken ourselves.
So getting to the human side of everything, is it the own personal meditation that people have to do in order to be able to focus on finding this spiritual travel, whether it's into space, into time, into their own body, to learn who they are?
Well, I think it's all an individual choice as to what are the things that attract your attention. You can do something ordinary that will open up a portal for you into something greater and more meaningful. You can watch science videos like Science Channel, and just be amazed by constant discoveries about the universe. You can look at nature and try to start thinking about how the system that is inherent in nature, and really see yourself reflected in all of these different things. It's not so much that I'm saying you have to meditate, because let's face it, we're not going to have a world of meditating people. Okay? There can't be just a one solution fits all. That's not going to work. There has to be a whole bunch of different paths, but all of them adding to people's ability to discern and to become aware and to become awakened to something that is more human than they even comprehend at this point. Again, one of the reasons I go back to ancient times and why I write a sci-fi that is visionary, this is not a sci-fi that is basically trying to say that there are people or aliens on other planets who might mean us harm. This is a visionary sci-fi that says there are beings across all of existence. Existence is larger than you can imagine, and that we can communicate across a higher consciousness that unites us all in one grand evolutionary journey.
Are most people ready for that in your mind?
Yes, I really think that people are ready internally. In other words, in an unconscious sense, everyone's ready. In a conscious sense, there's a lot of blockages, basically because of negative experiences in life.
So, with that type of awakening that people need in order to see what is out there for them, do you see in your research more people starting to open up, or do you see them still being closed due to technology, due to life, due to whatever their circumstance may be?
Yes, so let's take this program for a second. People listening here are hearing us discuss this kind of Hubble telescope view of reality, and in the process, that is having an effect. When you're talking about alien visitations and so on, besides just the direct value of hearing an interesting story, there is something that is happening when you start exploring beyond ourselves that opens up the mind, that creates a level of plasticity on a pretty high level. So in that respect, listening to Dave Scott is very healthy.
Well, I should hope so. A little dose of Dave goes a long way. I'm not going to lie. I kind of enjoy, and for a lot of people, to be honest with you, and I read the comments here on a daily basis in our chat rooms and on social media, they use this show as part of their healing. They use this show as part of their nightly social aspect of themselves. When you build a place where people feel safe and you build a place where people don't feel judged, their personalities are allowed to roam free. And when a person has that type of freedom without being judged or misled, it's amazing how comfortable they can be and what kind of commitment they can make to you on their own terms.
Exactly.
So along those lines, is it a matter of just bonding with people or bonding with them spiritually? How does that work?
Yeah, I think again, it's a building up process, just like relationships or bonding. One of the areas I visited in writing in The Waker is the relationship that the hero has with his wife and his son and another family member that is revealed to have many, 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 many past lives in regards to their relationship, and that the bond is not just a bond that has happened by some circumstance in their present life, but is something that is already highly developed within them. Some people like to be looking for a soulmate or somebody that they feel especially like they're resonating with. It almost feels like, oh, you look familiar, or, you know, I feel like I already know you. So the notion of the bond is something that is very much a part of the Buddha's teachings. And that might surprise a lot of people, because a lot of people think that Buddhism is about becoming detached. And in fact, if you look at the Buddha's original teaching, it's exactly different, that practices like meditation are only supposed to be tools for re-engaging with your true self and re-engaging with other people as well, in terms of raising the level of the relationship. So even relationships are based on where the people are in their own consciousness. And if you work on raising your consciousness about another person, you're also developing yourself in regards to your awakening. So it's actually, you know, exploring and developing your mind is a full-time job that happens all the time, no matter what you're doing, in every kind of circumstance. It's an opportunity either for you to see bigger picture, to understand the essence of things, to understand the nature of how things are happening around you, and be able to navigate your life in such a way that that you're evolving. Your mind, your consciousness is evolving. That should be everyone's goal. If it's not, it's not. The universe doesn't have a stopwatch. You know, it's like, okay, you want to hang out here for about 1 billion years? Okay. You can either do that or come climb the mountain. It's up to each individual. As you said, Dave, there's no judgment.
I fully understand, but can most people comprehend that in today's day and age?
Probably not, you know, in an intellectual sense. The fact of the matter is that a lot of it happens in terms of experience, and it is through experience that people discover. And sometimes you have to fall in order to discover how to walk. So there is no judgment, again, in terms of what people can't do, because the can't is always part of the becoming. So it's just, you can't measure people in terms of where they are relative to one another, because everyone's basically following a different karmic path. But all in all, I'm trying to give the big picture. I'm trying to show, not on a small time span level, but on a large, mega size, universal level, that we are all part of this journey, whether we are conscious of it or not. So as you become conscious of your journey, you can gain more abilities and more skills in going further with it.
We only have about 2 minutes left with you here tonight, and this is a show that has absolutely flown by. What's next for you, Harvey? Is it to... I know you mentioned you got the second book coming out along the terms of the Wakers. Are you going to continue on the sci-fi path, or are you going to kind of bounce back?
I felt that when I wrote The Buddha from Babylon, I wrote a book that is like took a lifetime to write, and that I put everything that I could into that. So that's a done deal. Now I'm living in the present moment, and I'm writing as a sci-fi visionary in order to communicate lessons of consciousness. So reading both books is two different experiences, but very much mirroring one another in regards to facilitating higher consciousness. And that's basically the road I'm on. And whatever opportunities come up, if I can do virtual reality or film or whatever other opportunities come in order to communicate, I'm going to go do that.
Quickly, let us know where everyone can find your books.
All right. The Waker Portal of Perfect Light by Harvey Kraft is on Amazon, Apple iBooks, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, Kobo. And that's an e-novel downloadable to your tablet, best way to read it. And what else? The Buddha from Babylon, go to buddhafrombabylon.com. There is also a link to the Waker from that website as well. And that's basically it.
Right on, Harvey Kraft. BuddhaFromBabylon.com. Thank you so much for being on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to get you to hold on for a second here, because I'm going to wrap this thing up. If you're listening in on the Spaced Out Radio side, you're listening to Mr. Ron Bumblefoot THAL, the official music of Spaced Out Radio. Bumblefoot takes us in and brings us out of every single show. I want to thank Mr. B for rocking us in and out. Tomorrow night on the program, Dr. Rita Louise is going to join us for the first 2 hours. We will be talking the Holy Deception. I'm looking forward to it. It should be a good one indeed. Remember, if you want to catch this on our show and our archives, our YouTube channel is Spaced Out Radio Show. You can find it on TuneIn, RadioStationGuide.fm, TalkStream Live, Stitcher, and don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes as well. Good to have you all with us in the chat rooms. You guys are phenomenal. And on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Great night with all of you. I will talk to you in exactly 21 hours from now. Also, check us out on Patreon.com. We have some really cool features that we want to give away to you. So look up Spaced Out Radio on there. It's going to be a lot of fun. Appreciate you taking the time to spend it with us. That always amazes me, that you want to do that every single night. Thank you so much for tuning in. Mr. Bumblefoot, take us home.